Hi everybody, it's Joe from Chalily, where we celebrate water in the garden. Today we're at the production greenhouses and we're going to show you how to divide your perennial water lilies. Now a perennial water lily simply means that it comes back year after year after the winter time. Some plants are perennials throughout most of the United States, while others have specific areas that they're perennial too. So you'll have to check those zones and make sure when you are buying your lily that you're getting what you're expecting. This perennial water lily is definitely in need of transplant. At the retail store, we will sell them in these size baskets, and our retail store, for convenience, we add a hook. This is just so we can pick it up and load it into your car. So when you're in St. Louis, come by and visit us. You can pick up a plant that is in a basket with a hook. Otherwise, if we're going to mail you a lily, it's going to be bare root, ready to grow, ready for you to plant. It won't need dividing. We only have to divide perennial water lilies every few years, and the lily is going to tell you when it's time. One of the techniques that it tells you is when the leaves are standing way above the water surface. Those leaves are really reaching for extra sun. They're telling you we're crowded down here in our crown of our plant and we're reaching for more sun that we can get. Another way a lily's going to tell you that it's time to divide it is when the tuber has reached the edge of the pot. So when we plant a water lily, we're going to show you that we're going to put this tuber starting on the other side of the pot, and it grows all the way over and says, it's time to transplant me. I've hit the edge. Now in this particular example today, look what this one did. It grew one direction and another direction. Both sides of the pots are being hit by that tuber. It's definitely time to transplant this lily. Oftentimes this tuber will have plantlets or islets growing off the side. So you might have a plant growing this way, one growing forward, and we can separate all of those and pot them up completely independently. So we've decided that this lily needs transplanted because it's got multiple tubers growing to the edge of the pot, and it's definitely in need of some division. So depending on the time of the year you're doing your transplanting, and I think water lilies, perennial water lilies precisely, can be divided just about any time of the year. Most people will either do it in the summer going into autumn, or they'll do it in the spring going into summer. But we're doing this example today in the autumn. So this plant's been growing all summer long. So what the first step I'm going to do in this example is simply remove the leaves. Now if you're doing it in the spring, especially the early spring, you may not have any leaves on there at all because it's still dormant. Perfectly good time to transplant your water lilies. So I'm just going to remove all the leaves, and the energy for the new plant and the new roots are coming out of that tuber. So don't give any hesitation to cutting those leaves off. Now because we're late in the summer or autumn season, you may also still have some flower buds. Flowers take energy away from roots, and we're really interested in this tuber producing roots. So if you see any flower buds during this process, it may be difficult, but I would definitely go ahead and cut them off also. Okay, so we've removed all the leaves, and now the fun part. We're going to turn this container over, and oftentimes this smells horrible, so don't be surprised. And we're going to kind of just rip into here. If you have a garden knife that you like to use, myself, I like to use hand pruners. I'm just trying to remove as much soil. Any of those tiny little rootlets, they're going to have to get cut and removed. So this looks like it was one tuber that grew in two directions. A little bit unusual, but it's just telling you that that's what this particular one wanted to do. I'm going to keep the growing tip intact. So if I had multiple growing tips, I'd have multiple plants. This one has one growing tip and the old tuber. And this could be 6 inches long like this one. It could be 12 inches long. It really depends on the size of the container that it was in. I'm interested in the last 4 or so inches. So I'm just gonna be real rough with this and cut right through that tuber. Nice healthy tuber, good coloration. So now that's going to make it easier. And again, you don't have to be too gentle about it. I'm just pulling that tuber, getting rid of some of that old soil, and I'm gonna go ahead and trim these roots at the same time. So if it has roots present, I would just leave about 4 inches of the old roots, trim off the rest. Sometimes the tuber may not have roots at all. It may be, perhaps this one grew over the side of the pot and there's no rootlets at all. You just cut that, and now that is a whole new plant. It's gonna be fresh and happy in a new container. Now this tuber here, I don't see any more eyelets, so I can't do any more plants off this one. So we'll turn our attention to this side. And if you noticed in the beginning, that water lily tuber was growing across the top of the pot. We're gonna keep that in mind as we transplant it in its new home. Oh look, here's one of those little eyelets. So this particular tuber's, if we had let this continue to grow on, this would have produced a whole new rhizome growing out this direction, whole new set of leaves, new flowers, everything. So most perennial water lilies, depending on the size of the pot, you could probably get by with leaving in that pot for a year or two. If it's a tiny pot, you might have to transplant it and divide it every year. If it's a nice big pot, then you might be able to do it every few years. But look for those signs when the lily's telling you it's time. All right, because this little eyelet is so small, I think I'm gonna leave it on there. If I was really trying to do a lot of propagation, let's just do it for fun. I would cut it off and pot it up totally separate. Oh, look at that. Look what we have underneath. A new surprise. A whole new water lily was hiding underneath that tuber. That's very unusual too. So today we've got 1, 2, 3 good lilies that definitely belong in an individual pot, and 1 baby that could have stayed on there and produced a plantlet along with one of his mothers or sisters, or however you want to view that. So we turned 1 into 3. Why is that important? It's important because all of this plant growing in such a small container actually will start to make the plant suffer, because there's just not enough space, there's just not enough food down in that soil to make all 3 of these happy. So by dividing the plant and potting these up separate, you're gonna make each plant flourish individually. All right, if you're a professional like we are at Chalily, I don't wear gloves, you're gonna get messy. If you wanna wear gloves, no one's gonna hold it against you. I have taken all the old soil away and added it back to the compost pile, and now I have fresh soil, a fresh container. If you use the best soil that is available to you, it's going to be something from the ground. Now at Chalily, we custom blend this soil. We call it Chalily Aquatic Gold soil, and it is really the gold standard. We have a secret recipe that we use, and then we can use this for all our shallow water plants here at the greenhouses, definitely for the lotus, definitely for the water lilies. So if you have access to a computer and you want to order some of the aquatic gold, that's very wise. Other soils that are on the market, like the fired clay substrate, will not add any nutrient value. It will add a place for the plants to root, but it's not offering any nutrients to the plant. That's why this is better. Sometimes people will use pea gravel, and again, it's a substrate that will hold the roots. The plant's gonna be fine, but it doesn't offer the plant any food at all. So I believe the best thing that we can do is imitate Mother Nature. In nature, in a natural earth bottom pond, what kind of soil are you finding the water lilies growing in? A heavy clay loam, just like the one that we've mixed up for you. So that's what we use here at the greenhouses, and that's what I think you should use. All right, so first thing, that if we're going to use the best soil, you have to use a container that doesn't have any holes. This has a lot of clay in there, and that soil will weep out if we use a basket that has a bunch of holes. So we want to use a pot that has no holes, whether it's a rigid plastic one, like this is what I prefer, or there are woven or cloth pots also. Those are great. They won't allow this soil to weep out. The reason that's an issue is if this soil starts to weep out through those baskets that have all those tiny little holes, then it can make the water cloudy. So we want to offer the plant the best soil, so we just have to keep that in mind and offer it. The best situation for that is a pot without holes. Okay, so all we're going to do next is add some soil to the container. And we're just going to start layering in this soil. And when we're about 3/4 full, then it's time to start doing adjustments and seeing where this lily is going to be. So let's use our first example. This was that first one that was the largest of the group. And we, just a minute ago, we cut this edge, remember that? Well, we want to place that cut edge on this side of the pot. That allows this growing tip to be pointing towards the center. So in this example, it's almost completely in the center already. This is that little bonus one that we found. It's the cut edge is over here. Again, we're putting the cut edge over on this side of the container, and the growing tip's just barely off the edge. What this is going to allow us to do is this tuber, again, grows on this top of the soil. It's going to grow all the way across, and in a year or two, it's going to tell you, hey, I'm over here and I'm crowded. Please divide me per Joe's instructions. All right, so let's go back to our original one. This is a nice big one. All right, so we got to envision where our top of our soil line is going to be, which I'm hoping that we're going to end up right about 3/4 of an inch below that top of the pot. So I think that's a good spot. And now I'm just going to go back. I hold that tip so I don't bury it. Water lilies grow on that surface of that container, so we don't want to bury that tip of that too deep in the container or too deep into the soil. Move that soil around. Look at that, our tip is at that perfect level. If you're a professional, then you give it a couple bounces. You have to do that if you're a professional. What that really does is actually settle the soil down. Did you see it was completely full? And now we've taken out some of those air pockets. So give it a little shake, give it a little bounce. Our tuber is perfectly at the right surface level. Again, it's gonna grow all the way across, looks great. Now, depending on the time of the year it is, you may want to add some fertilizer. If I was doing this in the spring or the summer, I would add 2 tablets of Chalily fertilizer. This is aquatic plant fertilizer made specifically for water plants. It does not cause algae. It does not harm the fish in any way. But today, as we started in the very beginning of the video, it says that we're doing this in the autumn, so we're not going to fertilize. But if it was spring or summer, I would just push these down, all the way down into the soil as far as I can. And we're going to do that every 2 weeks once we start doing that in the beginning of the season. In the autumn, when I'm transplanting, I'm taking the fertilizer out and just allowing the roots to grow without it. That's really what we're most interested in. We're interested in this tuber sending out nice root mass, rooting in, and then flourishing in the future. So all of this is done for the future. It could be a couple weeks if we're doing this in the spring or summer, and we'll have blooms already. If it was warm in the spring or summer, then we're going to see new leaves come out just in a matter of days. So if you have a lot of fish, especially big fish that like to dig, and most fish do like to dig, you could top dress this with some gravel. If you have big koi that like to dig, then I would use big pieces of gravel and golf ball size or so. And I would just set those here just to ask the fish, please don't dig up the plants. Because the fish, some fish like to eat the plants. Some fish just like to root in the soil because they're looking for other things to eat. So if we want to avoid the fish from stirring up that soil in our pond and emptying our pot, then we want to put a big piece of gravel across the top and protect that soil from getting mixed up with the fish. The next thing is just to take this back to the water, and I would lower it slowly. Once the water comes over the top edge of the pot, then go real slow and allow it to just seep in a little at a time. If we throw it in the pond, it's going to get all mucked up. If any of the soil leaches out in the pond, no big deal. It's not going to cause any harm. It may be cloudy for a day or two, but it should clear up without any trouble at all. So I hope you learned a few tips on how to divide your perennial water lilies. And as you can see, I have a few more to do down here. I have a few more thousand to do in the greenhouse. So it's time for me to celebrate water in the garden with you each day at Chalily.